Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything or anybody in any way. I just like knives. And you've been joining me every week on a tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives. Thanks for the company. I've appreciated having you along. Today we're going to have a look at this model, Quiet Carry Drift. I'm not an outdoorsy person or a mountain man or anything like that, but I do spend time outdoors, and unfortunately, I do tend to get wet. I have hobbies that involve being outdoors at night when it's dewy, outdoors in the rain, occasionally manage to travel near coasts, and I also live where there is a substantial winter, and so outdoors in the snow, and all of those things result in being wet. So I've always been interested in having a rust-proof or a rust-resistant knife. Quiet Carry has two that I've had my eye on for quite a long time. This, the Drift, and another, the Waypoint. They're not easy to get. The titanium models that really interest me don't stay in stock long. They're almost always out of stock, which is very frustrating when you're trying to get one, but a source of kind of smug pride when you do manage to get one. And I did. I managed to get a titanium model that I'll show you in a few weeks. Anyway, in the meantime, I had a substantial trip on and near water coming up and wanted a rust-resistant knife, so I compromised and picked up this one, which is the G10 model of the Drift. And I say compromise only because I was hoping for a titanium, but it turns out this is actually a really nice knife. So formally, Quiet Carry Drift G10 black model is what we have here. This is a thumb stud opening knife. I guess I better open it that way. There we are, thumb stud opening knife, running on phosphor bronze washers, and as you can see, a liner lock. So a very traditional build. It's a mid-sized knife, compact, not huge, not overly small. We'll do a couple of comparisons here. The internationally recognized scale is the pocket calculator scale, and as you can see, it's just slightly over a pocket calculator in length. Actually, I usually have my case on my calculator for that comparison, don't I? So let's do that. There, that makes it more internationally comparable with the other knives that I've shown this way. And so now we're seeing about, 0.95 pocket calculators. A useful comparison. Less usefully, just for the fun of it, we'll compare it to a couple of other knives. First of all, the other rust-proof knife currently in my collection would be the Terrain 365 Otter. And it's basically the same size. Very different look and feel and design, but basically the same size as that knife. A couple of millimeters longer than a mini Griptilian. Very slightly longer than a small Sabenza. So you get the idea. It's comfortably in the mid-sized knife range. The weight, it's not a featherweight knife, 85 grams. The Otter, the other waterproof knife, is 77, so heavier than an Otter, heavier than a mini Griptilian. It turns out it's about the same weight as the TRM Atom. The blade is nice. I like drop point blades. This is a drop point. Under 3 inches, it's 2.999 or some fool number like that. So a laboratory test would say it's under 3 inches, and that matters in some places. A little unusually compared to some of the other knives, and the connection of the blade is quite wide this way. And the big thing about the blade, of course, is the steel. This is made of Vanax SuperClean steel, which is a good steel, sort of in the same range of performance as LC200N, really good steel, but very high corrosion resistance. Now, I'm not a metallurgist, but I am a scientist. I've read some of the papers. So as I understand it, it's a steel that uses a lot of nitrogen allied with chromium. And so it tends to form nitrides instead of carbides. And anyway, the upshot of all that is that it is not rust. It's not a blade that can't rust, like the Terrain 365. This can't rust because there's no iron in it. but it is a blade that is extremely stainless. It's very high rust resistance. In a test I read from Knife Steel Nerds, this was the most rust-resistant steel of the steels that he evaluated, and yet has excellent edge retention. So it is really, the steel is really the star of this knife. You can get this thing wet. You can drop it in the ocean and find it months later, and it will not rust, which is nice. I like that. So other than that, what about the blade? The blade has a large finger choil, so it's very, and a forward jimping. So it's a very comfortable blade to choke up on for fine work like that. Thumb stud opening, and the studs are removable. This side is screwed, and I'll come back to that, but I do like having removable studs. The body is ordinary. It's a G10, which is an okay material, and it is quite heavily textured, so it's a very rough, grippy feeling. So a knife I can see myself holding while wet and not losing my grip on. The clip is a little ho-hum. It's a bent wire clip, titanium wire, I believe. Tip up carry. It is movable to the other side, but not to the other end. Now, there's no lanyard hole in the knife. I don't think it really makes sense to have I don't know, maybe it would. Would it make sense to have a lanyard hole in a knife that's designed to be used wet? The lanyard would get wet and would be sopping wet. But then maybe the additional security of having a true lanyard around your wrist, I don't know, is that a thing? Anyway, there's no lanyard hole. I usually comment on whether knives are ambidextrous because I have some left-handed friends. So let's say for opening, sure. The left and right opening mechanisms are essentially identical. Thumbstead, of course, I can't open it. Well, I can. Look at that. I can open it with my left hand. There's lots of room to get in there. So for the opening, yes. The clip, yes. Closing, well, a liner lock is not ambidextrous, and I guess left-handed people can learn to do that, but I'm sure feeling that awkward. So, I'd say no, it's not fully ambidextrous, but pretty darn good. Quiet Carry is designed in the US, but it's manufactured in Taiwan for people who care about that. And I will say, just really well done. High manufacturing tolerances, blades beautifully centered. It can be loosened enough that it'll drop shut. I don't like blades dropping shut, so I don't have it that way, but really beautifully put together. So let's go over some likes and dislikes. What do I like? Well, of course, the corrosion resistance. That's the thing. It's something to be proud of, talking about it, and it's extremely practical. And it's not just that it won't rust, it's that I can wash it. When I came back from that trip I mentioned, I'd been in an area with a lot of blowing sand and water, and this thing was full of sand, and just sand got everywhere. And so, I'm very comfortable sticking it under hot running water and washing it out. I actually used soap and water and washed all the sand grit out of it, and was completely comfortable doing that. Now after that, I felt guilty. Did I wash the lubrication out? So I put a drop of light oil into the washer areas after doing that. I don't know if that was necessary, but it felt right. So it's not just that it's a blade that you can get wet, it's a blade that you can wash, and I kind of like that. Other things I like, the opening mechanism is really smooth. You can open it slowly, one-handed. You can flick it open. You get a good solid lock even when you open it slowly. There's the good solid lock. When you're closing it one-handed, the heel of the blade is what encounters your thumb and stops the blade. So it's that little extra safety that you can't get distracted and close the blade on your hand or on your finger, and I appreciate that. And being a liner lock, you don't have that problem that is common with frame locks where you're accidentally pressing on the lock bar with your finger while you're trying to open it. So it's always easy to open. So I like all those things. It's comfortable, good finger molding, a full 4-finger grip. And as I mentioned, you can do a full choke up with your index finger. There's lots of room there in that blade choil. Speaking of the blade, other than the steel, nice and sharp out of the box. Not mirror sharp. I have not sharpened this, so that's not a mirror edge, but it is damn sharp. I'd say it's probably in the 600 grit range. Plenty sharp enough to use for basically anything. Fairly small bevel. And it is nicely centered, by the way. I've checked, and it bugs me when blades out of the box are off-center. This one isn't. I did mention that the thumb stud is removable, and I like that. Why do I like that? Because if and when I need to sharpen this knife, I'll take the thumb studs off. And that way my stone is not abrading the edge of the thumb stud while I'm working. So I do like being able to take the studs off a knife for sharpening. So lots to like. Couple of things that I don't particularly like. First, the clip is functional and okay. It's not a gorgeous clip, but it's functional and okay. Look at how it's held in there. The two wires are passing under a screw that just presses down on them into the body, which means that on this side, the recesses are there and the screw is there. And it's kind of ugly. It's not as ugly on this side because it's kind of hidden by the clip, but on this side, there's this weird screw sitting there across two grooves, and it's just, it's not attractive. I mentioned that the bevel was pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And that's really it. Just, it's not a gorgeous knife. I try to collect gorgeous knives, and that's my main complaint about it. Minor complaints, I hope. So let's actually give it a rating with my internationally unknown knife rating system. First, the NTGK rating, non-threatening gentleman's knife. We'll do non-threatening first. So the good news is the opening mechanism. You can open it slowly, so it scares people less. You can open it with two hands, so it scares people even less. And it has a simple shape. No, Klingon edge decorations and such things. So it is not a threatening looking knife, just basic, simple tool. And on the bad side, for non-threatening, I really can't think of anything. So I'm going to give it an A+ for non-threatening. Now, as a gentleman's knife, a GK, well, the good news is the steel. The steel is something you brag about. You have to explain it. But if there's somebody who's mildly interested in knives or tools and you explain that this is a steel that can't rust, that's kind of cool. Okay. So get some points for that. The clip is subtle and deep carry. When that is sitting in your pocket, there's really no knife protruding and just this little wire clip that could be anything. It could be a pen. So it doesn't look ungentlemanly in your pocket. And I like that the writing on the blade is minimal, just quiet carry on that side and Vanax on that side. And it is a dark gray writing on a lighter gray stonewashed blade, so it doesn't jump out at you. The writing is understated. I like that. Bad side as a gentleman's knife is the scale material on this particular model is dull. It's G10. G10 textured. You can put a lot of interesting sounding words around it, but it is basically black plastic. So that's not high-end gentleman jewelry stuff. And that simple industrial looking clip, it's not gorgeous. I'm going to give it a B+ as a gentleman's knife, a GK rating. So all told, as an NTGK, we'll call it an A. Now, how about my KN rating, which is what will my knife nerds think? Well, my knife nerds will love this thing. The pros are, first of all, the great and interesting steel. Both very good edge retention and very stainless, and that's just cool. Nice action, just really pleasant to flip open and close, and good grippy scales, well positioned finger grooves and jimping, so just they'll say, hey, this is a great knife to hold and cut with. So they'll like all those things. And on the cons for knife nerds, I can't think of any. So I'm going to give it an A+ as a KN rating. And finally, the CMR, the cut myself rating. Well, I have never cut myself with this knife, despite using it in some more extreme conditions, and washing it and handling it in a bunch of slightly less common ways. Never cut myself, so I'll give it an A. And that brings us to the end. Summary is, this is a great everyday carry knife, even without the fact that it is highly corrosion resistant. It's functional, it's got a good mechanism, it's comfortable to hold and cut with, has a good edge, and it'll hold the good edge well. And then kind of as an extra plus, it is completely corrosion resistant, which makes it worry-free. You can drop it in the snow, you can drop it in a puddle, you can wash it if you've got it dirty, and none of those things are going to hurt it. So it's not a compromise. This, for example, this is the Terrain 365. This is a compromise. This is a completely rust-proof knife, but it's funny looking and it's got a few flaws, and it's not a favorite knife, but it's completely rust-proof. This is a great knife that happens to be highly corrosion resistant. I'm not saying it can't rust, because there is iron in it, or the Terrain 365 can't rust, but it won't rust on top of being a really nice knife. So I like it a lot. I'm still going to pursue trying to get one of the titanium ones just because that's so cool. Like it a lot. Definitely a knife that goes with me when weather, water, or snow is a concern. Thanks for watching. See you again. Bye-bye.